As you know, I like your show, and I think I like the way you frame conversations. So I've always wanted to sit down and have this conversation with you. And there's a topic that I really want to get into with you is basically freedom, keep it as simple as possible, because I myself am trying to explore what that means to people. And I've had a lot of conversations with people recently discussing freedom. There is some pushback I get that I'm seen as a sympathizer of the government, but I'm trying to fully understand what freedom means to different individuals and what the trade-offs are and what that means for people in different countries. So it's an area I'm desperately trying to explore in the most honest way possible. And I was reading your article, the one you sent me. It's a long paper.
You get through it all?
I didn't get through it all. There were the bits in the middle I kind of skimmed. But what happened was I kind of ended up reading yours alongside Gigi's recent paper on
law and language.
Yeah,
and
rights. And I was kind of reading the two together, and I kind of felt that was a great framework of conversation.
Well, I actually get the chance to speak with Gigi like once a week for an hour and a half. So it's awesome to have someone of that quality and intellect to bounce these ideas off of and refine and stuff like that. So he's been on this before, right?
Yeah, he's been on before. I'd love to get him on again. I want to talk about his recent article with him. I want to get into that because there's a lot of interesting things within his article. I haven't completely finished it.
It's a long one too.
I know. I'm about 75% through. But it's funny, when I was reading it, and then I'll go back to yours, and then I was reading yours and go back. I don't know why. I was just going between the two of them for the last 24 hours. But I am trying desperately to understand what freedom means for different people, because I'm trying to understand if the freedom people want, they really understand the consequences, and also certain pursuits of types of freedom, does that actually lead to less freedom? And I think I want to dig into that with you and understand what it means to you.
Sure. What does it mean to you?
I don't think there is a individual simple way of defining freedom. I think there's multiple freedoms on multiple different spectrums. I think a good way of explaining it is when I hear people talk about decentralization, this is decentralized and this isn't, and people say decentralization is a spectrum. I kind of think of freedom as a spectrum as well. And I've always thought where directionally is, where's a project heading? I would say Ethereum directionally, it becomes more centralized over time. Whereas actually I think Bitcoin becomes more decentralized. So I'm trying to think of freedom in that kind of framework. Are we becoming more free or less free? I don't think there is a universal definition of what exactly freedom is to an individual, or I struggle to come with it. I certainly think directionally we're becoming less free in certain ways, and maybe in other ways we become more free. I mean, with Bitcoin we become more free, but for me, freedom is more like a pursuit. It's something we are either individually or collectively trying to pursue. But it's definitely something I'm wrestling with really, really in a hard way at the moment, and again, a lot of pushback on it. But I cannot stop pursuing this topic. What does it mean to you?
Well, I think freedom is like the ultimate. It's the thing that you want to figure out. And there's so many different ways that you can attack it, right? There's the political form of freedom. There's a spiritual form of freedom, the idea of liberation, right? Liberation from suffering, liberation from your ego self and all that kind of stuff. So it's a big topic, but I think that's why it deserves so much attention. And, I think we have to recognize, The Sovereign Individual is a very popular book in this space, right? And one of the theses that comes out of that is, much as you might want to impose a philosophy on your current era, whether it's now or 500 years from now or whatever, and your ideas about freedom, you're somewhat bound by the technologies available at the time and how much they foster your ability to maintain your independence and maintain your freedom. And I agree with that, right? So, and I use that as a preface to say, like, who cares what we think, basically? Because the second we decide to work together, right? Trade, form a society, form a culture, you're giving something up as a result of being a part of that group, right? Socialization of various kinds. And so, like, you could get granular like that and say, like, the freest way for me to be is to live out in the forest by myself and, hunt and forage and live off fresh water. And is that the ultimate freedom? And in my opinion, the answer is no. I think freedom is not just your ability to do whatever you want, but it's also your ability to access more potential, more creativity, more ability to be a force for creation in the world, for the emergence of novelty in the world, whether that's ideas or products and services or writing or whatever. And so what's so amazing about Bitcoin is I think you're right in that right now, for whatever reason, a confluence of technological, political, historical, even religious factors, we're in a period where the systems that we've relied on to interact and cooperate seem to be are under stress, at least. Whether they're at a breaking point, I don't know. But they're definitely under stress. And as a result of that stress, I think as those systems try to maintain themselves, they encroach upon people's independence and their freedom and their liberty more than perhaps they set out to do originally. Because as things break down, it's kind of like you're grasping for ways to survive. Whatever, whether you're an institution or a network or an individual, you kind of become desperate, right? And I think that's what's happening. And Bitcoin is this force that's, I think it's probably the most powerful liberating force that we've ever come across. Now we could nitpick, is it language? Is it the internet? Is it this kind of stuff? But I think by virtue of the fact that it allows you to establish such an inviolable property right over what is the highest external manifestation of you, let's say, in your money, right? Because your money is the emblem of your previously sacrificed time and energy. And we use that to trade and to determine the value of things and to work with one another. And up until now, that's been confiscatable either directly or indirectly by inflation. Most people, especially in this space, are aware of that. And this allows you to have a freedom over that stored time and energy that we've never had before. And, one of the things that I love digging into in my podcast and all the conversations we have around a conference like this is it's evident that people are changing dramatically as a result of this. I mean, you started this by saying, like, I'm grappling with this idea of freedom. You only grapple with things because you think there's something relevant on the other end of that will alter your perspective for the good, that will bring you closer to a value that you're trying to get to. And I see that represented in so many people in this space. I mean, people come up to me all the time at a conference like this, and they're like, I just want to let you know that, going down the rabbit hole, and consuming your content, Peter's, Rob's, whomever's, has changed my life. Like, I used to be whatever, addiction, substance abuse, bad relationships, aimless in life. And now, by virtue of my pursuit of understanding of this thing and establishing greater freedom in my life, and the corollary to that, which is taking more responsibility in my life, and the way in which and an understanding of Bitcoin and how fundamental money is to a culture and a market and a society has caused me to have a more hopeful vision for the future. I am now I'm way better off. I'm taking care of my health. I'm establishing better relationships in my life. I'm pursuing work that I find meaningful. It's outstanding. And so this is why, when I write the piece I wrote that you partially got through makes some pretty bold claims there at the end, because I'm trying to figure out why is it that this thing is so meaningful to people. And I think the feeling or sense, even striving that we all have for liberty and liberation from our own anxiety and suffering, liberation from the strictures of society that are imposed on us, is part of that pursuit. And when you are able to transcend that in various ways, it's very powerful. And so, I mean, to me, more so than the macro, more so than the monetary history, more so than the sick gains from being involved in Bitcoin, to me, the most powerful thing is to witness all these people. I've got my dad here, and what he remarked last night at the beefsteak, he's like, everyone's so happy and positive and humble and respectful and polite. Like, what is this? And that's the question I've been asking. What the fuck is this? What's going on here? Because I tend to think it's way stranger than we give it credit for. And we're all just kind of here grasping in the dark, trying to figure out what it's all about. But I think, to put a pin in your original question, is a greater felt sense of freedom because of the qualities of Bitcoin and what using it allows for is causing people to, one, take more responsibility, and two, see a different future on the horizon than they had seen before. And just anecdotally, my perspective prior to Bitcoin, I was like a gold bug type. I was always very critical of politics and government and all that jazz, somewhat of your typical gold bug. But what do? You look out on the world and you look at, the revolving door of big business and government and, all these massive forces that, at least from my perspective, were not serving the world, broadly speaking. We're not serving humanity. And maybe I was a bit young and naive, and maybe I was overly critical. I mean, there's always some of that. We all have our biases. But the punchline was, I didn't see how the mess of the world could get turned around. And I think there's a lot of people in the world today that feel that way, right? The nihilism, the anxiety, the depression, the substance abuse, all that's a part of that. As a result of that, I kind of checked out. I worked, I made money. I didn't treat my body or my health very well. I probably wasn't as, mentally with it and engaged as I am now and I strive to be now. But then when you figure out that there might be something emerging here in Bitcoin that can help rectify some of those issues at a very fundamental level, you don't have to have all these fights at a higher level. If you can fix it down here, as we often say, right? Fix the money, fix the world. But if you can fix that base layer, then I think a lot of stuff naturally gets fixed. And the result of that as an individual is you start to see a more hopeful future. And that awakens something in you to say, I want to be a part. That's a future that I want to be congruent with, or I want to be a part of, right? That's worth my effort. That's worth my energy. And I think that's happening on a growing scale now. And the fact that we're at a conference this week that's going to have 30,000 people, in it, I think is a reflection of that. And, I think it's awesome that we have these conversations and try to explore what's going on, because there's a significant hunger for asking the question, what is this? What's going on? Why are we being so transformed by it?